It happened with a shocking swiftness that left Canadians reeling. On January 6, 2025, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his resignation. The news reverberated across the country, leaving a nation in disbelief. After 9 years at the helm, Trudeau was stepping down. His departure sent tremors through the Canadian political landscape. The future, once seemingly clear, had become shrouded in a thick fog of uncertainty. Trudeau's announcement was unexpected. He had been a fixture in Canadian politics for over a decade. His image, carefully crafted over years of public service, projected an aura of stability and predictability. That image shattered with his resignation speech. The man who stood before the nation seemed worn, his usual vibrancy replaced with an air of defeat. He spoke of the immense pressure of leadership, the toll it had taken. His words did little to quell the anxieties gripping the nation. The gravity of the situation was palpable. Trudeau's departure was not merely a changing of the guard, it felt like the end of an era. The Liberal Party, which had governed for the better part of a decade, was now rudderless. The opposition, sensing blood in the water, went on the attack. The political maneuvering began before Trudeau had even finished his resignation speech. The signs, in hindsight, were there all along. Trudeau's grip on power had been steadily weakening. His once soaring approval ratings had plummeted. Economic anxieties gripped the nation. A series of political miscalculations had eroded public confidence. The man who had once been seen as invincible was now deeply vulnerable. The first cracks appeared years ago. The global economic downturn, a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Europe, had hit Canada hard. The Trudeau government's response, while initially lauded, had begun to falter. Critics argued that the government's spending programs were unsustainable, that they were mortgaging the future for short-term gains. The public, feeling the pinch of rising inflation and stagnant wages, grew restless. Then came the steelworker confrontation. During a campaign stop in Hamilton, Ontario, Trudeau was confronted by an angry steelworker. The man, his voice trembling with rage, accused Trudeau of abandoning the working class. The video of the encounter went viral, a stark symbol of the disconnect between Trudeau's rhetoric and the realities faced by many Canadians. The incident, though seemingly isolated, exposed a deep well of resentment simmering beneath the surface. As the pressure mounted, key allies began to distance themselves from Trudeau. Chrystia Freeland, his trusted lieutenant and deputy prime minister, resigned in a very public and acrimonious split a year prior. Her departure, a devastating blow to Trudeau's authority, signaled that the ship was sinking. Freeland, once a staunch defender of Trudeau's policies, now became his most vocal critic. She accused him of prioritizing political expediency over principle, of losing sight of the needs of everyday Canadians. The opposition, sensing an opportunity, seized on Trudeau's vulnerability. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader, hammered away at the government's record on the economy, on crime, on immigration. Poilievre, a skilled orator with a populist touch, tapped into a deep vein of discontent among Canadians. He promised a return to traditional values, to fiscal responsibility, to law and order. His message resonated with voters hungry for change. Trudeau, once the darling of the left, found himself increasingly isolated. The progressive coalition that had brought him to power had fractured. Environmental groups criticized his government's record on climate change. Indigenous leaders accused him of failing to deliver on his promises of reconciliation. The very people who had been his most ardent supporters now felt betrayed. The news of Trudeau's resignation sent shockwaves across the globe. World leaders expressed their surprise and, in some cases, their concern. Canada, once a beacon of stability and predictability, was now seen as vulnerable. The political uncertainty in Ottawa had implications that extended far beyond Canadian borders. In Washington, President Donald Trump, never one to miss an opportunity for self-aggrandizement, reacted to Trudeau's resignation with a mixture of glee and opportunism. He suggested that Canada, now leaderless and adrift, should consider merging with the United States. Trump's comments, while widely condemned as insensitive and out of touch, underscored the new reality facing Canada. The country was now perceived as weak, ripe for exploitation. Within Canada, the political landscape was in disarray. The Liberal Party, now tasked with choosing a new leader, seemed rudderless. The contenders for the leadership, a mix of familiar faces and ambitious newcomers, were united only by their desire for power. The party that had once seemed so cohesive was now riven by internal divisions. The upcoming leadership race promised to be a bruising affair, one that could leave the Liberal Party further weakened and divided. As Canadians grapple with the implications of Trudeau's sudden departure, the future hangs precariously in the balance. The country, once a symbol of stability and progressive ideals, faces a period of profound uncertainty. The upcoming election, scheduled for October 20, 2025, looms large. It will be the first test for the Liberal Party without Trudeau at the helm. The polls, though famously unreliable, suggest a tight race. The Conservatives, led by the charismatic Poilievre, are seen as the front-runners. A Conservative victory would represent a dramatic shift in Canadian politics, one with potentially far-reaching consequences. The stakes are high. The decisions made in the coming months will determine the course of Canada for years to come. As the nation stands at this crossroads, one thing is certain. The Canada that emerges from this period of turmoil will be vastly different from the one that came before.